talk about starting seeds, especially seeds for transplanting in your garden. I usually do the tender annuals like tomatoes, peppers, leeks, and things that require a longer growing season, longer than we have here in the valley. And then of course there are your other seeds that you can get you can get all these seeds actually at our seed library, and we have other seeds like dill, cucumbers, beets, beans, peas, things that you can direct sow in your garden. And I find that if you do that, they usually get a pretty good start, and you get a very good crop. So today we're gonna move to Gardener Richard, and he's going to show you some of his transplants.
Yeah. And question for you, Tim: have you ever started like direct sown? These things can take cold weather. Sweet pea, radish, beets, corn salad, mizuna, arugula, tatsoi, lettuces. So I can sow them right now, couldn't I?
Yeah.
Because they don't never mind the cold; they'll germinate when they're ready.
Yeah.
When they're happy.
Yeah, a lot of people won't like to put their peas in early. I find that if I wait a little bit to put something like peas, sweet peas, regular peas, your bush peas, whole bean peas in a little later, they grow just as fast once the soil warms up.
It's the temperature it needs to,
yeah.
and then they get happy,
Yeah.
right?
They don't mind the cool temperature.
Yeah.
But everything likes the warm soil to grow. So.
Great. So folks, after you go to the library and get your seeds, or wherever you get your seeds from, and you're ready to start, and there's all kinds of varieties. Here I have an example, a couple of things I've done. This is just a little salad garden, basically, that I've been eating from the past couple of months. I could transplant these out because the lettuce won't be harmed, and arugula. These will all be happy outside. I could do it now, but right now we're still eating from them. We take a little bit off of all these plants. But the reason I put them in separate little 3.5-inch pots is so that I could potentially separate them out more easily and transplant them if I wanted to. And I could space them out if I want to let them get bigger in here. Anyway, this is, and having these kind of trays is very handy, by the way. So, that's something that I did, not just for transplanting out, but for eating. But you could do either. Starting cannas indoors or tender bulbs. So I've got about 8 of these that I've revived that I kept from last year. And then you get more cannas each year. And you can do annuals, like Tim said. Well, flowers are annuals, and there's a few little marigolds I popped in here, directly into the cell pack. So and then I've got some basil over here and I've got lots downstairs because I give a lot of this to Tim and his friends and my wife at the Annapolis Valley Regional Library. And we have some parsley that I didn't get to transplanting early enough, and I just use that as kitchen parsley and eat it, and some other ones I've started. So, and we also have some tomatoes and some lettuces and a couple things I want to show you about starting, and maybe a couple of the little problems I encountered. But the first thing you need to do when you're starting is you have to have your seeds, and you have to have some kind of growing medium, like this stuff. I've got a couple in cups here and in a smaller cup. So when you start the seeds, to my understanding, there's at least a couple of main ways of doing it. One is to sow into a little tray, or sort of group them together somehow like that, for later pricking out and transplanting up into something larger, or putting directly into the cells in modules. And there's some pros and cons. When you plant directly into cells, if you don't get full germination, then you've got some empty cells, and you've got some growing medium that's not doing anything for you, and it's taking up space, maybe under your lights if you put them under your counter or in the window or whatever. So you can have some failures, and you have some kind of wasted space. The other the way to safeguard against that sometimes is to put, multiple seeds in a cell, one or two or three, and or two or three or more, and then thin them, which is viable. Even in this case, there are multiple seeds in here, but what I did, and this is a little problem with this method, not this method, but me putting two different things into the same tray. One thing worked, the other thing didn't work. Now I can cut the tray in half, or I can put something else in here, or I can just go, whoops, my mistake, and I've got a little bit of wasted space when I put these under my lights are under the shelf. The other thing about doing it this way as well, and this is not so much because of planting directly into cells, this is because I did two different kinds of things. These are both lettuces, so I thought that was fairly safe. But this is fennel, and this is a lettuce that didn't do very well. So the germination rate was different, but also this is a much taller plant in different shapes. So when you're trying to keep the moisture in and put a bag over it, whatever, one of them starts and goes like crazy. The other one doesn't. It becomes difficult to help these guys germinate by keeping them constantly moist without, dealing with these guys. You can put a dome over top and that'll work if your dome's tall enough. So when you plant directly, you plant a bunch of seeds in a pot, then you have to prick them out and put them into something larger. And hopefully just once. You put them into modules then, or something larger if they're kind of a bit too big for the modules. So here's some celery that I started, and it's ready to do something. It's a little bit leggy, but we'll see what we can do, and we'll pot one of these up as an example. I also have a couple of trays of tomatoes here, and tomatoes are something that everybody likes to grow at home because they're just great, that's all. And once again, so I put a bunch of seeds in here. This is all the same kind of tomato. This is called Sun Gold. And here's another one, which is a really nice little compact, sort of a paste tomato or plum tomato, more like a egg, I guess, called Mayan Indian. And these are really neat.
So when did you start those, Richard?
I started the Sun Golds on April 12th. And the Mayan were a little bit after that, a couple days after that.
And today is May 5th.
Today's May 5th, yeah. So, and if you're doing this method where you're going to prick them out and put them into something else, it's best if you do them when they're small. But I guess the roots are getting to the bottom and they're getting tangled again, and we'll show you that in a moment. One of the rules, I think, Tim, is people say when they have the first set of true leaves, or when they start getting their second set, something like that, right? And so this has the cotyledon leaves or seedling leaves, and it's got a true set, and it's got another thing started. So these are definitely ready to go, and these have all that in the bag of chips as well. So we can, I think I'll do maybe the larger ones as an example. I'm not sure, maybe not. So we have, I'll just do a quick show and tell on doing the potting up. So I use a lot of solo cups, or beer cups or whatever, and drill some holes in the bottom for drainage. And you don't have to do that, but it's in case you're over water, it's a nice safety precaution. And I also have these little ones that come prefab, and I have a tray that holds them. And if you're starting just a few things, you don't need that much support for them. But if you do a lot, then having trays where the things fit, like this, for example, having trays that fit can help you handle the whole thing much more easily than having to go all separate cups and water them and put them back on if you've got a shelving system or whatever. So the only knock on this particular tray is that the modules are fairly big. And in terms of modules, like if you want to get a nice plug by the time you're ready to plant it, the bigger modules, when I'm ready to plant, sometimes the growing medium wants to fall off it, and it's a little harder to handle, but it still works okay. So I put things in here that are a little bit bigger. This is kale and chard, 4 different varieties, 1 row of each. Okay.
So basic rule is you probably, if you're going to start some seeds in a module like that, is to try to have seeds that are similar in growing pattern and size. And
I think so, because you're trying to handle. If you're trying to handle them together, it's kind of a birds of a feather flock together approach, which kind of makes sense. I have mixed them, as you can tell, in that one, but they're kind of similar in the way that they grow and get started. So okay, let's start some seeds first, and then we'll transplant some of these guys. So all kinds of seeds at the seed library, and but Gardner Tim gave me these ones last week, and it's just Tabasco peppers, and I've never grown peppers, but we start the seeds the same as anything else, right? Yeah. Right. So if we're doing it by, start a bunch of them and then move them into something else method, this is called pricking out, I think is the English term, then I've got some moistened medium here, and it's just in a simple tray. There's no drainage holes in this. This is what you buy mushrooms in at the grocery store, and that's what this is too. And the other great thing about these kind of little trays too is that if you have something individual, then an empty tray can hold say the beer cup or the solo cup, and then you can water from the bottom just by putting water in the tray. So that works pretty well. Okay, let's get some seeds started here. How many do we have? So we'll just sprinkle a few. There, that's a big bunch. Knowing that we are going to want to have them have a little bit of room, because they get pretty hard to untangle, especially if I don't get to them soon enough, like we'll see when we do the transplant. So that's quite a few, but you can pack in tons of them. It just makes them a little trickier, right, Tim? They got to separate them out. And then what I usually do here is I just kind of spritz them to make sure they're moist. I've got a little more growing medium I brought in. And you put a little bit on top, and I guess the sort of general rule is somewhere between 3 and 4 times the size of the seed. So tiny seeds you barely cover. Slightly larger seeds you cover a little bit more. And a little press. Do you press, Tim, a little bit? Just
I do, yeah.
for good contact, yeah. And then I could, spritz it again, or I could use the same. But this is it's all moist underneath, so that should be pretty good. Push a couple of them down a little bit. There, and now, once they get moist, they have to stay moist until they germinate. So, in order to contain moisture, you can use all kinds of devices. And one of the simplest and easiest is a plastic bag or a freezer bag or whatever. Not super tight, but it's already starting to show a little bit of moisture. So that's done. Just got to keep it moist. So I'll spritz it a couple times a day, and doesn't need light necessarily, but it has to have reasonable warmth. So that's all there is to that. So they'll pop up in a few days. Are peppers pretty quick?
Not as quick as tomatoes, but they'll probably be up in probably a week. Less than a week.
Yeah, there you go. Some things take longer, and I mentioned earlier I started some of these things, the sun goals on April 12th. Parsley is really slow to germinate. So I started that probably 2 weeks before that, probably near the beginning of April, maybe near the end of March. Really, really slow to germinate. But then, it gets going a bit, and I potted these up about three days ago, and I have more light downstairs, but they seem to be okay here. And the basil seems to be fine here too. So if I could take advantage of my under counter lights here, and what I can also do is sometimes I've put some things upside down like I did over there, and I could put 2 Kleenex boxes or whatever, and just to raise the plants up closer to the lights. It makes the kitchen look a little funny, but it works. Okay, so let's say some time has gone by. We've got some things sprung up, and maybe in the case of these guys, well, here, we'll do one of these. The tools I use are a popsicle stick and a pencil with an intact eraser. That's not to be perfect, but intact eraser. And I could dump this right out, and maybe I will, so I can separate some of these guys out. That means I'll have to finish the job today. I can't just. Okay, come on up, you little guys. There we go. There. Now it looks a little crazy at first. You're trying to figure out where all these things are, but all we have to do is, if we can find a cotyledon leaf, or I guess any leaf really, and we'll just work our way at it. And there, we've got a little plant, holding it by the leaf, not the stem, holding it by the seedling leaf. And now we just pop it into some growing medium.
Yeah, looks like it's got a good root going there.
Yeah, that's a nice little root. And with all these things, tomatoes have hairs on them, so they can grow roots from any of those hairs that are on the stem. So you can bury them basically. But everything else you can still bury it up to the cotyledon leaf. So rather than having a big, wobbly thing, you can just take it, stuff it in this hole, and then just you can firm around it a little bit. There, and that one's done. I could go a little bit deeper, maybe, but it's not going to stand straight up anyway. It's going to take some time to grow and get happy, and then start going, north-south like these guys are. And it looks like parsley because apparently celery is in the same family, right? As parsley.
Yes.
Okay, so these guys are going to need to be kept moist and dealt with today, but I'll just kind of do like that. My wife knows that we're doing this in her kitchen, but it's actually my kitchen. I'm the cook, so here we go. So with something a little larger, and you want to get into a larger cup, I've got some moistened growing medium in here, but not moistened right to the top. So I top it up a little bit. So there, that'll get it moist. And I don't know about you, Tim, but when I do a lot of this watering things, and I just do it by feel how heavy they are, right?
Yep.
If they get really light, then they go, whoops, needs some water.
And you don't want to keep the soil soaked whilst the plants are growing. You just want to let them dry out to till the soil is damp to your touch, not saturated.
Yeah, exactly. So I put a little bit of water on top there, but that won't go very far, and it's not gonna soak the whole thing.
Well, that'll help them to get a start.
And the fact that the growing medium was pre-moistened is very helpful as well, because then it wicks better. If it's completely dry, sometimes water will just float, stay on top of the peat for quite a long time before it goes down. So if it's sort of activated by having a little bit of moisture, it wicks better. Same when it's from the bottom up. So maybe I'll grab one of these guys over here because I don't have to tilt the whole thing out. I don't think. Maybe I'll just take a little section. There you go. We got one. That's one. And it's pretty. I'm gonna use that whole little root ball there. No sense knocking it off just because I don't need it all. It's just going to disturb things a little bit more that way. So I'll just dig a little hole. Drop this little guy in, hanging by the leaves. And I'm going to put him down pretty far. I didn't put him right down to the hilt, but reasonably far. And all the little hairs that are on the stem of any plant that has those little hairs, and there's a name for it, I don't know what it is, but it's a certain kind of plant, they can form roots. All those little hairs become roots in the right conditions, I guess being moist and underground, or in the ground. So that's how you do one that's not too lanky, hasn't kind of gotten away from you. If you have them and they're much taller, these aren't a whole lot taller, but I can get one out here. I can find the leaf. Oops, broke the leaf off that guy. This may not cooperate. Oh, it kind of did. So what you can do, they get a little bit too long. This one's not too long, but if it were really long, you can actually just lay it across the hole, like that. Take your pencil, and poof. You almost fold it in half and make it go down in the hole. And when I thought about it, I thought, that seems like it's risky. It could hurt the stem. But as we said, it's going to grow roots along the stem. The roots that are there probably aren't damaged anyway. And there's a method of planting tomatoes that some people use called trench planting, right, Tim? I don't know if you've ever done it yourself.
My uncle used to do that.
Yeah. So you make it rather than a hole, you make a trench, and you lay the tomato in, and then all the stem is all buried, basically. You just put a little stick and have the end sticking up, and you get a lot more root development. Root development means tomato development. So there we have it. Now a couple of things about aftercare. After you've done all these and get them ready, get them into their pots, you have to be concerned about water and keep them moist and evenly moist for these guys. Regular little spritzing for the seeds. Here is a seed, by the way, which requires light in order to germinate. So I can't cover it completely. So you have to be kind of diligent about keeping some water. So this is Nicotiana sylvestris. It's flowering tobacco, and this is for the gardens of AVRL. Right? And I'm going to start some other Nicotiana, which is the one that's used in smudging, right? Yeah. So that's just a little aside on that. So this kind of stuff you can spritz on top because the seeds are right at the top. But these guys you can water from the bottom because they're already down here. The roots are already down there. So pouring water on top can possibly give you problems with mold, especially in this case because I don't know if I'm cheap or stupid, but I should have put more medium in there so it wouldn't be down almost an inch because that's just gonna stop airflow and possibly get mold. But there's things we can do about mold. So I wanted to show about watering. So with anything that you've got that has holes in the bottom, you can water simply by flooding a tray, or if the tray that these trays are, sometimes they have little holes in them, but they are initially waterproof, so I can just lift that out, dump water in, and water. So obviously there's nothing going on here, and the other side is watered fine. But the fennel and these struggling guys here could use a bit of water. So all I have to do is flood the tree, and I could just spray them on top too and then just deal with it that way, but this way they suck up what they need. And since this side doesn't really need much because it's pretty moist, I can just kind of let that there. So now the fennel is, sort of basking in its little spot conditions and getting all happy. So that's bottom watering. When I do this downstairs, when I have cups, I have to, I put a bunch of cups in, or I flood the thing first and I put cups in for 10 seconds or maybe 20. Not a long time. But you have to see how well your medium sucks up stuff. Now the other thing about seed starting, I run into it all the time, is mold. And if you top water, or even if you're spritzing, things take a long time to germinate, then you're creating the ideal conditions for mold. You want warmth, you want moisture, and that's what it loves, so it'll happen. So we've got some mold. Let's see, these guys. So, see that, Jay? So you see in some of these areas, there's a little bit of white mold there and there. Then you see this brown substance here. Well, that brown substance is cinnamon. And cinnamon and mold do not get along. So that's one way you can deal with it, is put some cinnamon on top. Another thing too, of course, is to create ventilation. Have a small fan or have a place that has good ventilation, and so that the tops are dry. Now, in these modules, the tops get dry. Sometimes they're getting dry inside, but I can bottom water this and let them drink what they want. If some of these guys drink and some of them don't, then I'll water from the top. Because sometimes, I don't know why, just a little bit difference in how they're sucking up the water can cause some to dry faster than the other. And the air currents. So downstairs on my grow shelf, there's a vent for the air exchange system, and even though these things don't have lights over them, there's a little difference in airflow, and they always dry in this back corner first. And so the next day I water them, then I turn it around, so that dries in this back corner first. The other thing you can do about mold, so we mentioned cinnamon, which you can sprinkle on the soil. Sometimes when the plants are already growing, it's hard to get it in there. The other thing to do is spray either full-on bottom water or top water, or just spray with hydrogen peroxide and water. So I've used that successfully, and also if I've ever had any fungus gnats that were in the growing, I see the larvae in the growing medium, it kills them off. So it'll be these little tiny little white flies flying all over your house. And you would do that simply by mixing, look, there's lots of recipes online, but people are way smarter than I am. And I think something like a 6-to-1 of the regular 2 or 3% hydrogen peroxide you get at the pharmacy, with 6 parts of water, 6-to-1, and then you can simply aim it right at the stuff and zap it, and it really works. If you go too strong, you might burn your plants, and I don't spray the plants anyway. I try just to spray on the mold and on the dirt. And there you have it. That's what I know about starting seedlings.
Great. So I've got a couple questions. So here we are. It's May 5th. So how long before you can transplant, say, the tomatoes outside?
Well, a lot of the plants that are tender, as you know, Tim, suggest plant out after all danger of frost has passed. I have no idea what that means, but I do know that the average frost date for like the Kentville Research Station is like May 26th or something like that. But I also know that we had frost right here in Berwick, right here in my yard, a couple of years ago, maybe 3, on June 7th and June 9th, and they were pretty bad frosts. So What I've tended to do is to wait sort of to around the beginning of June and put them out, and I can cover some of them. I can cover one bed, you know, back there by putting some cages and putting a car cover over top, you know, to protect them if we get a frost warning. Other ones, you know, I've had some losses. Is that about the timing that you use in Bridgetown and
Yeah, it is.
Englewood?
Yeah, I try to wait till at least, you know, early June at the earliest.
Yeah, well, that's the purpose, folks, for starting them indoors, is because they, you know, you start trying to put them out early, they're going to get nuked. So, but as Tim said, the growing season is such that if you don't even start them, like you say, you started them outside in like middle of June or something, you know, you're not going to get any results unless you have a very short season tomato, like a red alert or you know, something like that, you know, a 50 or 60 day tomato. But if you got a beefsteak that's 80 days or whatever, you got to start them inside, and that's days from transplanting too. So you take into account the fact that you have to germinate them and then grow them to a certain stage. So there's a risk there. I've been guilty of going too early. I've been guilty of starting seeds way too early. Then I end up having to put these things into containers like that, or even 1 gallon containers. The first year I gave some away to you and the staff. They were big containers. But you know, it's hard to dampen the enthusiasm when spring is coming.
So for some future programs, you can join us. Richard and I will be at the head office here in Berwick. We have our moving through gardens, so we'll be planting those probably in another 3 or 4 weeks. We'll be planting our Three Sisters gardens. So we have our Three Sisters packs that you can get at our seed library, and they consist of corns, beans, and squash. And we'll show you how to start your Three Sisters garden. It's a companion planting at its best. And we'll also be planting at our moving through gardens ceremonial tobacco that Richard is starting. And we'll also have some white sage there that we'll plant, and possibly even some sweetgrass that we transplanted from another source. And we want to thank everybody, all of our donors at our seed library. Our seed library is available at all of our branches, and the best thing is that all the seeds are free. So you can just drop in and browse through our great selection and take home some free seeds and start gardening. So we want to thank all those local donors, and we want to thank the province of Nova Scotia for their financial support with our 2022 seed garden.
Happy gardening, folks.